In this video, we address the grammatical basics of Koine Greek prepositions. So as to English grammar and as to grammar generally speaking, a preposition is a word, usually a small word, that indicate how two other words relate to one another. So this definition may sound quite vague, and that is because it is quite vague. And prepositions, by their very nature, can do a lot of different things. And this is why this definition is somewhat vague. So notice it is two words. So a preposition can connect a verb to a noun, or a noun to another noun, or it can connect a variety of words or put a variety of different kinds of words into relationship with one another. And in the examples in this video, and also in the examples and homework for this week, you'll see that played out, the sort of the wide range of different kinds of words that prepositions can connect together. And there's, generally speaking, two types of prepositions. A preposition takes its name from the fact that classically it can be preposed or put in preposition of a verb. So a proper preposition, that is a preposition properly speaking, is a preposition or a word that is prefixed or added to the beginning of a verb to make a compound verb. So you can take a preposition, a small word like ek, which means out. You can take a verb like balo, which means I throw, and you can add them together to make ek balo, I throw out. So by adding the preposition, by preposing it to the beginning of the verb, you make a new verb that means something else and carries the connotation of the preposition meaning out. So that when you add out to throw, you get I throw out. But this is also not always the case, that the sort of the words don't equal the sum of their parts in some cases. So you can't necessarily assume, if you know what the preposition means and you know what the verb means, if you just add them together, you're going to get a sum that makes something like this. So even though ana means up and gnosko means know, when you add I know and up to make ana gnosko, it does not mean I know up. Rather, it means something totally different. It means I read. So there will be cases where the preposition sort of tells you something about what the verb means. And there will be other cases where the verb is changed altogether, so that in the vocabulary list, what you'll find is that you're given the sort of actual definition of a verb that is a compound verb made out of another verb and a preposition. So it's always important to sort of pay attention to the definition given to you in a vocabulary list or in a Greek dictionary or lexicon, rather than trying to figure out what a compound verb means on the basis of dividing up its different parts. So all of this, again, is what we would call a proper preposition, a preposition that has been added to the beginning of a verb. And one other thing to note, we have learned so far in this class about imperfect and aorist tense verbs, and we learned that imperfect and aorist tense verbs are going to add an augment to the beginning of the verb. Usually this occurs in the form of an epsilon. You need to know that when a compound verb like this, a verb that has a preposition at the beginning of it, it is going to take its augment between the preposition and the root of the verb. So it won't come at the very beginning of the verb, but will become sort of in the first third of it. So the case of ekbalo, our example from up here, if we wanted to make this into an imperfect, it would be xa balon. So notice that our epsilon augment has gone in between our ek and our balo, and this has also caused the kappa to change to an xi. So you'll see this kind of change fairly regularly, where you'll still be able to recognize sort of what the consonant is insofar as they make the same sound, but you'll see consonants change slightly. And so what I'm going to do here is give you a very quick pop quiz, of course not worth any points or anything, but I've given you here this form of exabalon. Can you tell me what the difference is between exabalon and exabalon? So notice here, first let's look for what the difference is. So, sort of spot the difference between the two words. So you may need to pause the lecture really quick and see if you can spot the difference. And then the next step to take is to figure out why that difference matters. So you probably noticed that this one has an extra lambda and this one has a missing lambda. So why does this one have a missing lambda, and how does it change what the word or what the verb means? So remembering back to the imperfect and the aorist, remember the imperfect tense is built on the present tense form. So if our present tense form is ekbalo with 2 lambdas, then the imperfect is also going to have 2 lambdas. Then the aorist, in this case a second aorist, is going to change the stem. So there's been a change to the stem balo. One of the lambdas has been lost, which tells us that this is an aorist tense verb. So the difference in translation in English is, remember, the imperfect is ongoing action in past time. That I visualize this as sort of a squiggly line between 2 points, and the aorist is just a single point. The action is viewed simply. So this would be translated, I was throwing out. So I was doing that. The action was ongoing in past time, versus I threw out, that the action is viewed as a whole in the aorist tense. And a little bit more on prepositions here. So we've talked about proper prepositions that are added to the beginning of a verb to make a new verb, but prepositions can also stand on their own. They can stand independently. So we have an example here in ha Jesus ebalen. So Jesus threw ton daimonion. Jesus threw the demon. Ek tes ecclesia. So here we have the preposition ek standing on its own, standing independently, and going with what comes after it. And we'll talk about what comes after it in just a second here. But the point is that a preposition can stand on its own, or it can be added to the beginning of a verb. And sometimes you'll see both at the same time, that it would not be at all odd to see ha Jesus ex ebalen, and then still have ek tes ecclesias, that Jesus threw out the demon from or out of the church. That the ek is repeated. Greek often has no problem with redundancy, that it will repeat words, and whereas in English we like to sort of simplify things and not have that kind of redundancy. So one more note about sort of the form of prepositions before we talk about what will come after a preposition. So the note here is that the final vowel of a preposition will often elide or drop out if the next word begins with a vowel. So you'll see the last vowel of a preposition drop out, and sometimes the consonant of that preposition, when the vowel has dropped out, will change. And they will change from what is called, they'll change to their aspirated form. They'll get a th sound into them. So a tau will change to a theta, and a p will change to a phi. So examples of this are mata. If this alpha drops out at the end, and the next word begins with the vowel, you'll get meth with apostrophe there, indicating that the alpha has dropped out there. And so going back to what comes after the preposition. So remember I said out of the church. Notice that here the church is in the genitive case. And this is because prepositions take different cases. That the prepositions will have after them nouns in particular cases. And these are what is called the object of the preposition, or the direct object of the preposition. So our example here is ek, taking the genitive, out of the church. Down here we have the preposition in, which takes the dative, in the church. So notice that we have a similar phrase here, ek tes ekklesias and in te ekklesia, but we have different cases following the prepositions, and that is because the preposition wants to have words after them, or it will force the words after them to move into a particular case. So in the case of ek, it moves the phrase after it into the genitive. In the case of in, it moves the phrase after it into the dative. And some prepositions will take multiple cases. There are a number of prepositions that will only take one case. There are a number of prepositions that take two different cases. And then there are some prepositions that take three different cases. The cases will always be the genitive, the dative, or the accusative. Preposition will not take a nominative or a vocative. But in those cases where a preposition takes multiple cases, the preposition can change its meaning based on the case that follows it. So, for example, para has three different prepositional meanings. It can be translated three different ways depending on what comes after it. So if it's followed by a genitive, it's going to mean from. If it's followed by a dative, it's going to mean with. And if it's followed by an accusative, it's going to mean beside. So I give you an example of each one of these here. Para tu theou is going to be from God, where para to theo in the dative is going to be with God, and then para ton theon is going to be beside God when God is in the accusative case. So when you are learning prepositions, and this is how the prepositions are given to you in the flashcards, you should learn them with the case after them, so that you should learn para plus the accusative equals beside. And then you learn a separate flashcard that para plus the dative, or para with the dative, means with, because your translation is going to change depending what comes after the preposition. And so the last thing that we're going to do very briefly here is go through some examples of prepositions, and I'm going to give you some chances to pause the video and answer some questions here. So I give us two different sentences. The first one here is dia ton graphon genoskamen ton naman tu theou. So the first thing I want you to do is identify the prepositional phrase. You might be able to do this from your reading of Black's grammar and from the previous introduction to prepositions earlier in Black's grammar, but you can also do this by sort of process of elimination, that if you look at the other words in the sentence that should be familiar to you and their grammatical functions should be familiar to you, you should be able to figure out what the prepositional phrase is here. So what is the prepositional phrase? In this case, it is going to be dia tu graphon. And the next question I want you to engage, so maybe pause the lecture here for just a second and take a look at it, is which word does the prepositional phrase relate to? So if prepositions are words that relate different words together, what are the words being related? So if the prepositional phrase is dia ton graphon, which means by the writings, what word does by the writings relate to? So the answer here is it most closely relates to the word that comes directly after it, genoskamen. So we know, and then the thing, for to mark our sentence, our indicative verb is genoskamen, and the thing that we know, the object, is going to be ton naman tu theou. We know the law of God. So our subject is in the amen here, an implicit subject. We know the law of God. And the way that we know is through the writings. This prepositional phrase tells us the information about how we know here. So we can almost say that this is sort of the prepositional phrase is sort of functioning as an adverb might in English, that we know by the writings. And one more sentence here, and once again I want you to go ahead and identify the prepositional phrase in this sentence that I am going to read for us first. So we have genoske, ha mathetes, parabalein, peri tes basileos. So can you identify here the prepositional phrase? In this case, it's going to be peri tes basileos. So we have the preposition peri with the genitive phrase tes basileos following it, because the preposition peri takes the genitive case, and when it takes the genitive case, it means about or concerning. Peri can also take the accusative case, which means around. So if this were tein basileon in the accusative, then this would mean around the kingdom rather than about the kingdom. And then let's ask the same question once again. Which word does the prepositional phrase relate to? Or which word is it sort of most closely associated with? And once again, it is the word that is closest to it. And this is a trend that you are going to see in Greek, that a prepositional phrase is going to modify the word either that comes before it or that comes after it almost all of the time. So in this case, the prepositional phrase peri tes basileos is modifying or telling us more information about parabalein, the parable. So to put it together, we have a parable about the kingdom. And so looking back to the rest of our sentence, anagnoske is a verb meaning to read. And notice here that we have our preposition ana connected, a proper preposition connected to the verb gnosko. And again, this does not mean to know up. This means read. So we have he, she, or it reads. And we have after it a subject in the nominative case, indicated by the definite article ha and the ace ending. This is one of those tricky endings that looks like it is a feminine noun, but is actually a first declension masculine. Remember, mathetes is the nominative masculine singular form of disciple. So the disciple reads, and what they read is a parable about the kingdom. So in this case, I circle the whole thing sort of as the object of the verb anagnoske, because parabolain goes so closely with the prepositional phrase that follows it.